The sun had not fully risen when a morning fog drifted lazily across the narrow country road that linked three small communities together. The air smelled of wet dust and pine, and somewhere far off, a rooster crowed, calling the day to begin. But even before the first rays of light touched the ground, there was already someone waiting at the crossroads. She sat beneath an old oak tree whose roots cracked the soil like aged fingers. Her name, as people whispered it, was Miss Lena May. She came every morning before anyone else was awake. She carried a small woven cage filled with guinea fowls, soft, speckled birds that clucked quietly as if whispering secrets only she understood. Some days she hummed old church hymns. Other days she just sat in silence, eyes half closed, as though listening to the earth itself. No one knew where she came from. No one had ever seen her house, her family, or even her footprints past the crossroads. She was just there, like part of the road, like a story that never ended. Children often tried to run toward her, drawn by the shiny feathers of her birds. But their mothers would yank them back, warning, "Don't you go near that woman. She's strange. Folks say she talks to spirits." So the children watched her from afar, whispering and daring each other to go closer, but never doing it. Drivers who passed that way slowed down whenever they saw her. Some greeted politely. Others pressed a horn impatiently. Yet Miss Lena May never seemed bothered. Her calmness unsettled people. She didn't sell her birds loudly or call for buyers. She didn't even bargain. She just sat, and somehow, by sunset, the cage would be empty. Then she'd rise slowly, dust off her faded shawl, and disappear into the woods, humming again. Rumors followed her like smoke. Some said she was a widow who'd lost her mind after her husband died in a fire. Others swore she was no ordinary human, but a wandering spirit that punished the proud. But no one could prove anything. They only knew that when Miss Lena May looked at you with those calm brown eyes, something inside you shifted, as if she could see all the things you were hiding. About a mile from the crossroads lived Mrs. Clarissa Brown, the woman everyone called Queen of Willow Creek. Her white-painted mansion stood at the top of a hill, guarded by a black iron gate and two marble lion statues. She owned half the farmlands in the county and never missed a Sunday service in a red Cadillac. To her, life was all about reputation. Who wore what, who ate what, who lived where. She believed poor people were poor because they were lazy, and she told anyone who would listen, "I built myself from nothing. I don't owe pity to nobody." Every time Mrs. Brown's car rolled down the road past the oak tree, she would see Miss Lena May sitting quietly with her cage of birds. Sometimes their eyes met for a brief. Second, Miss Lena May would nod politely, but Mrs. Brown would lift her chin and look away. "Such a shame," she'd say to her driver. "An old woman wasting her life on the roadside. If she's not careful, death will find her before success does." One morning, while the skies still glowed faint pink, the unexpected happened. Mrs. Brown's car broke down right beside the oak tree. The engine coughed, hissed, and died. She was on her way to a women's fellowship meeting in town, dressed in a sharp blue suit and pearl necklace. Furious, she ordered her driver, "Fix this car now. I don't want to be late." But the man shrugged helplessly. The engine refused to start. Miss Lena May watched quietly from her spot. She didn't move for a while, then stood up and walked over, her wrapper brushing the dust. "Good morning, ma'am," she said softly. "Looks like your road is testing your patience today." Mrs. Brown frowned. "I don't need comments from strangers. Mind your birds." The old woman smiled faintly. "I'm only saying, sometimes the road stops us, so we can see what's been waiting all along." Her voice was low, almost musical. Mrs. Brown turned away, pretending not to hear. The driver tried again. Suddenly the engine roared to life. Mrs. Brown froze. Slowly she looked back at Miss Lena May, who was already walking toward her tree. Their eyes met again, and the old woman said calmly, "Have a blessed day, Mrs. Brown." It shocked her. How did the woman know her name? But before she could ask, the car sped off. That night, Mrs. Brown couldn't sleep. The memory of the old woman's calm voice lingered in her mind. "Have a blessed day, Mrs. Brown." She told herself it was coincidence. Maybe the woman had heard someone say her name. Still, it bothered her, the way those eyes had looked straight through her fancy clothes and polished smile. Days turned into weeks, but something about the crossroads began to change. Travelers said they saw strange lights near the oak tree at night, like small lanterns moving through the air. Some said they heard singing, soft, sorrowful hymns floating through the fog. Others claimed the guinea fowls glowed faintly under the moonlight. Fear spread quietly through the nearby villages. Meanwhile, Mrs. Brown was busy preparing for her daughter Vanessa's engagement. She wanted it grand, something people would never forget. She had ordered imported decorations, city musicians, and expensive meals. "My baby will marry like a queen," she boasted to her friends. Yet deep inside, she was restless. Whenever her car passed the oak tree, she felt something tighten in her chest. Miss Lena May was always there, as if waiting, always humming that same haunting tune. One afternoon, while Mrs. Brown supervised workers in her garden, her young maid Tasha approached timidly. "Ma'am," she said, holding a small envelope, "the preacher's wife sent this. It's an invitation to their church charity program for widows and homeless people." Mrs. Brown barely looked at it. "Put away. I don't mingle with beggars." "But, ma'am," Tasha said softly, "they said the old woman by the crossroads will be there to bless the meal. They say she helps people find peace." Mrs. Brown laughed coldly. "Peace? From that ragged bird woman? Don't make me laugh, Tasha. The only thing she can bless is dust." She walked away, her heels crunching over gravel. That evening, heavy clouds rolled in, thunder rumbled across the sky, and the wind howled through the trees. Mrs. Brown sat on her balcony, sipping tea, when lightning flashed, and for an instant she thought she saw a figure standing beneath the oak tree miles away, shining white in the storm. She blinked, and it was gone. But that night she dreamed of guinea fowls fluttering around her bed, their feathers brushing her face as a gentle voice whispered, "Pride makes even the full stomach empty." She woke up trembling, her heart racing. The next morning, she told herself it was only a dream. Yet when she went to open her window, she found 3 small feathers resting on the sill, soft, speckled, and glistening with morning dew. She quickly brushed them away and muttered, "Just birds." But deep down, something inside her knew it wasn't just that. From that day, nothing around her house felt the same. The air grew heavier, mirrors fogged without reason. The servants whispered that at night they heard the sound of birds cooing outside, even though the henhouse was empty. One of the gardeners swore he saw Miss Lena May standing by the gate before dawn, holding a single glowing feather. But when he blinked, she was gone. Mrs. Brown refused to believe any of it. "Old people and their superstitions," she said angrily. "I'll not be frightened by some roadside woman." Still, each time her car passed the crossroads, her eyes darted toward the oak tree. Miss Lena May would be there, sitting calmly, as if she'd been waiting just for her. And each time, those same words echoed in her head. "One day, destiny will walk your road too." If only she knew that day was closer than she thought. For fate had already begun to stir quietly, moving to the forest, through the feathers, through the heart she had hardened for too long. 2 weeks had passed since the strange feathers appeared on Mrs. Brown's window, but she refused to speak of it again. She had a grand celebration to plan, and nothing, not even an omen, was going to ruin her only daughter's engagement ceremony. Her mansion buzzed with activity from morning till night. Trucks came in with decorations, flowers, silver chairs, and boxes of imported wine. Chefs from the city moved in and out of the kitchen, shouting orders and chopping vegetables. Even the air smelled of money. Vanessa, her daughter, was a quiet and soft-hearted girl, nothing like her mother. She loved helping people and was known for giving food to children from a nearby village. But her mother always scolded her for it. "You can't help everyone, Vanessa," Mrs. Brown would say, brushing invisible dust off her designer dress. "People will take advantage of your kindness. In this world, you either rule or you are ruled." Vanessa would just smile and reply, "Mama, kindness doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." But her mother never listened. She wanted her daughter to marry into another wealthy family, someone who could keep their status shining in the community. The groom, a young businessman named Michael, was handsome and charming, though a little too proud of himself. To Mrs. Brown, that was perfect. Pride recognized pride. The night before the big event, the sky turned dark earlier than usual. Rain began to fall heavily, and the sound of thunder rolled across the land. Inside the kitchen, chaos brewed. The head chef, a nervous man from Atlanta, ran to Mrs. Brown, trembling. "Ma'am, I don't know what's happening," he said. "All the chickens are dead. Every single one." Mrs. Brown blinked, confused. "What do you mean, dead?" "They were fine this morning." "I don't know, ma'am. They just dropped." The moment lightning struck, we heard a strange sound from the coop. When we went there, all the birds were lying still. Not one alive. She stormed to the backyard, rain soaking her hair, heels sinking into mud. The coop was filled with feathers and silence. Not one chicken moved. Their bodies looked untouched. No wounds, no blood, just lifeless. Her mouth went dry. The storm howled louder, as if mocking her. "Impossible," she whispered. "This can't happen now." Servants gathered around, murmuring prayers. One of them, the young maid Tasha, held a lantern close to her chest. "Ma'am," she said timidly, "maybe it's a sign." Mrs. Brown turned sharply. "A sign of what? That thunder kills chickens? Use your head, girl." Tasha stepped back, but spoke again, voice trembling. "There's that old woman by the crossroads, Miss Lena May. She sells guinea fowls. Maybe you could buy from her for tomorrow. They say her birds are blessed." "Blessed?" Mrs. Brown barked. "You think I'll serve my guests some roadside woman's bushmeat? Are you out of your mind?" "Please, ma'am," Tasha said softly. "It's the only chance. The stores in town are closed because of the storm. And Miss Lena May's birds are healthy. People say they never fall sick." Mrs. Brown sighed heavily, pacing back and forth. The thunder kept crashing. The rain poured harder. She looked at her dead chickens, and then at the worried faces of her cooks. Pride told her to reject the idea. But desperation whispered another truth. She needed those birds. "Fine," she said finally, her voice low and bitter. "Send the driver first thing in the morning. Tell him to buy everything that woman has. And if she tries to talk nonsense, tell him to keep the change." At dawn, when the mist still hung over the trees, her driver drove to the crossroads. Miss Lena May was already there, sitting quietly with her cage of guinea fowls, humming softly as always. She looked up when she saw the car stop. The driver, a young man named Reggie, stepped out nervously. "Morning, ma'am," he greeted. "My boss sent me to buy your birds." "All of them?" Miss Lena May nodded slowly. "All of them?" she asked. Her voice was calm but knowing. "Does your boss finally wish to taste humility?" Reggie shifted uneasily. I don't know about that, ma'am. She just said to buy them." The old woman smiled faintly. "She doesn't have to know what's written in her own story. Here." She handed him the cage. There were 8 guinea fowls inside, all plump and shining with unusual brightness. Then she picked one smaller bird from another basket and said, "Take this one as well. No payment needed. Cook this one last, and peace will stay in your house." Reggie frowned. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "I'm sure," she said softly, then leaned closer and added, "Tell your boss that blessings don't come dressed in gold. They come feathered in humility." Reggie nodded quickly, paid her, and drove back to mansion. By mid-morning, the sky cleared. Guests began to arrive in fancy cars, laughter echoing across the compound. The cooks prepared the guinea fowl stew, and soon the air filled with an aroma so sweet that even Mrs. Brown herself stopped to inhale. "Now that," she said proudly, "smells like success." She didn't know which of the birds was the free one Miss Lena May mentioned. She only knew the stew tasted perfect. She ordered more to be served. The event began with loud music and clapping. Vanessa looked beautiful in her golden gown, her smile bright enough to warm the coldest heart. Michael stood beside her, holding her hand for the photographers. The yard sparkled with lights and laughter. Mrs. Brown floated among the guests like a queen, taking compliment for the food, the music, the decor. Her heart swelled with pride. Everything was perfect. As the evening grew darker, a strange wind swept through the yard. The candles flickered, and the musicians paused. A hush fell over the guests. Then out of nowhere, a soft voice rose, an old voice, gentle yet commanding. "Who feeds me tonight?" It said. "We'll taste truth tomorrow." Everyone turned. At the far end of the yard stood an elderly woman dressed in white. Her eyes glowed faintly under the lights, and in her hand was a small feather. The crowd gasped. Some crossed themselves, others whispered in fear. Mrs. Brown froze, staring. "Who invited her?" she hissed. No one answered. The woman smiled calmly. "Do not be afraid," she said. "I only come where pride has eaten too much." "Guards!" Mrs. Brown shouted. "Remove that woman from my property." But before anyone could move, lightning flashed, and when their eyes cleared, the woman was gone. Not a trace left behind. Only the wind remained, carrying the faint sound of guinea fowls clucking in the distance. Panic spread like wildfire. Guests whispered. Children cried. Some ran toward their cars. Mrs. Brown's hands trembled as she tried to calm everyone. "It's just a trick of the light," she said loudly. "Some foolish beggar sneaked in to cause a scene. Please, everyone eat. Drink. Don't mind superstitions." Slowly, the tension eased. The band resumed playing and laughter returned, though not as loud as before. The party went on until late night, and when the last guest left, the compound grew silent again. Only the sound of the wind and the soft cry of night birds filled the air. Mrs. Brown walked into her house, exhausted but relieved that the event had gone well despite the strange interruption. Vanessa hugged her mother before going to bed. "Mama, that woman in white, who was she?" she asked. Mrs. Brown forced a smile. "Probably some mad woman from the village. Don't think about it. Sweetheart, sleep." Vanessa looked uneasy but nodded. She hugged her mother one more time. "I love you," she said quietly. Mrs. Brown smiled faintly. "I love you too, baby. Tomorrow will be brighter." But the next morning, the world turned upside down. At sunrise, the mansion was filled with screams. The servants rushed to Mrs. Brown's room, knocking furiously. She ran out in her robe, startled. "What is it now?" she shouted. "Ma'am, it's Miss Vanessa," Tasha cried. "She's gone." Mrs. Brown's heart stopped. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "She's not in her room, ma'am. Her bed, it's covered with feathers." Mrs. Brown ran, barefoot, through the hallway. When she entered her daughter's room, her breath caught in her throat. The bed was empty, the sheets scattered, and tiny white feathers lay across the floor. On the dressing mirror, written in white powder, were the words, "She is safe, but your heart is not." Mrs. Brown screamed until her voice broke. She fell to ground, clutching the feathers in her hands. Servants tried to comfort her, but she pushed them away. "Find her," she cried. "Search everywhere. Someone took my child." But deep down, something inside her already knew. She had seen those feathers before. She had seen that calm, glowing face. The truth pressed hard against her chest. The woman in white, the voice, the free guinea fowl. Everything was connected. And for the first time in her life, the proud Mrs. Brown felt something she had never known before. Fear. A fear so heavy it made her knees tremble and her pride crack like glass. Because somewhere, far away under the oak tree, Miss Lena May sat quietly, feeding her guinea fowls, humming the same soft song. And this time, one of the birds looked strangely familiar. Its eyes, its gentle face, it looked almost like Vanessa's. The road was silent again, but destiny had begun its work. What would you have done if you were Mrs. Brown? Would you have trusted the old woman by the crossroads or ignored her warning like many do? Tell us what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Wealth for more powerful African-American folk tales that teach, touch, and transform. For 2 days after Vanessa disappeared, Mrs. Brown barely ate or slept. The mansion, once filled with laughter and music, now felt like a graveyard. The cooks whispered prayers in the kitchen. The servants refused to enter Vanessa's room. And every night, the faint sound of wings fluttering filled the air. It was as if the house itself breathed fear. Mrs. Brown sat alone in the living room, eyes red from crying. The once proud woman now looked fragile. Her phone rang endlessly with calls from friends, reporters, and church members asking questions she couldn't answer. The police searched every road and forest, but no trace of Vanessa was found. Not even footprints, only feathers. By the third night, exhaustion finally pushed Mrs. Brown to lie down. She fell asleep on the couch, clutching one of her daughter's dresses. But in the middle of the night, she woke up to a strange humming sound. It was faint at first, soft like the voice of a distant choir. Then it grew clearer, a song she recognized. A gospel hymn, the same one Miss Lena may used to hum at the crossroads. Her body stiffened. She rose slowly, heart pounding, and followed the sound. It led her through the hallway toward the backyard. The moon hung low, painting the ground with silver light. The humming stopped. She stepped outside barefoot, trembling. The garden lights flickered, and suddenly, in the middle of the yard, she saw something that froze her in place. Vanessa stood there, wearing her engagement gown, glowing faintly as if the moonlight itself came from her skin. Her hair flowed gently in the breeze, and her face was calm but distant. She looked both alive and not alive. "Vanessa?" Mrs. Brown whispered. "My baby, is that you?" Her daughter smiled faintly. "Mama," she said softly, "why didn't you listen when the road spoke?" Mrs. Brown's heart raced. "What are you talking about? Come here, baby. Come to me." But Vanessa shook her head. "The road tried to show you grace. You called it dust. The woman tried to feed you peace. You called her madness. Mama, your pride built walls that even love couldn't climb." Mrs. Brown reached out, tears streaming down her face. "Please come home. I'll change, I promise." Vanessa's smile faded. "You can't promise the wind to stay still. You must go where it began." Her figure flickered like a flame, then vanished. In her place, a single guinea feather floated down and landed on Mrs. Brown's palm. She screamed, her voice echoing across the night, waking the entire household. The servants rushed out, but when they found her kneeling in the yard, there was no one else around, only feathers scattered across the wet grass. The following morning, a local pastor, Pastor Eli Johnson, came to the mansion after hearing about the strange event. He was a tall, gray-haired man with calm eyes and a deep voice that carried authority and warmth. Mrs. Brown met him in her living room, still clutching the feather she found. "Pastor," she began, her voice weak, "I saw her. I saw Vanessa. She spoke to me. I don't know what to think anymore." Pastor Eli studied her quietly. "What did she say to you, Sister Brown?" "She said I built walls even love couldn't climb. She told me I called grace dust. I don't understand. I've done nothing wrong. I worked hard. I raised her right. I've always given to the church." The pastor sighed softly. "Giving to the church is not the same as giving from the heart. You see, Sister Brown, sometimes pride hides behind generosity. We think we're helping, but in truth, we only feed our ego." Mrs. Brown shook her head. "No, Pastor, I am not proud. Her voice broke. "I just wanted the best for my daughter." Pastor Eli leaned forward. "And in doing so, you forgot that the best things in life are not bought. You mocked that old woman by the crossroads, didn't you?" Mrs. Brown froze. How did you know?" "She came to me once," he said, eyes glinting. "Years ago, when I lost my wife. I was angry at God, bitter at the world. But she sat by that same oak tree and told me, 'When the heart kneels, heaven stands.' I learned then that she was no ordinary woman. She's a messenger, one who appears to humble the proud and lift the broken." Mrs. Brown stared at him, speechless. "She doesn't harm people," the pastor continued. "She mirrors their hearts. Those who are kind receive blessings. Those who are proud receive lessons. Vanessa's disappearance is not a curse. It's a calling. The road is waiting for you to walk it." Mrs. Brown's voice cracked. "Pastor, I don't understand. How can Mother walk a road she doesn't see?" He stood up, took her hand gently, and said, "Sometimes a road doesn't appear until you take the first step." He opened his Bible and read softly, "God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble." Then he looked at her with deep compassion. "If you truly want to see your daughter again, you must find Miss Lena May. But this time, don't go with gold. Go with tears. Go alone. No cars, no servants, no jewelry. Only a mother in her heart." Mrs. Brown nodded slowly, though fear crawled beneath her skin. The thought of going alone to that forest road frightened her more than anything. But she was a mother, and mothers go where pain leads them. That night, she sat in Vanessa's empty room, staring at her picture. The air smelled faintly of feathers and perfume. She whispered, "If humility is what it takes, I'll find it." Her voice trembled, "Even if it breaks me." At dawn, she rose quietly. She wore a simple gray dress and tied her hair with a plain scarf. No makeup, no jewelry. She left her house barefoot, ignoring the driver's confused look. "I'm walking today," she said softly. The road was long and quiet. Every step echoed memories. Times she scolded people for being poor, moments she looked away from beggars, the laughter she shared with those who mocked others. Each memory weighed heavy on her soul. When she reached the crossroads, the oak tree stood tall and silent. But Miss Lena May was not there. Only her empty stool and an old basket lay under the tree. On the basket was a note written in neat handwriting. "If you wish to see what's lost, follow where the feathers fall." Mrs. Brown looked around. The air was still. Then, as the sun broke through the clouds, she saw a trail of guinea feathers leading into the forest. They shimmered faintly in the light, forming a path. She swallowed hard, her hands shaking. Then she whispered, "God, give me courage," and stepped into the forest. The moment she crossed under the trees, the world changed. The sound of birds grew louder, the air thicker. It was neither day nor night, just endless twilight. The ground was soft beneath her feet, and strange glowing flowers lined the path. Guinea fowls walked beside her, guiding her deeper in silence. They didn't seem afraid of her. Instead, they looked back every few steps, as if saying, "Keep going." She didn't know how long she walked. Time felt different there, slow but fast, heavy but light. Her dress caught leaves, her feet bled, but she didn't stop. At last, she reached a river that shimmered like melted silver. On the other side sat Miss Lena May, dressed in white, surrounded by dozens of glowing guinea fowls. Mrs. Brown fell to her knees. "Please," she cried, "I'm begging you, give me back my daughter." Miss Lena May looked at her gently. "You don't beg for what you already have, child. Your daughter is not lost. She waits for your heart to open." Mrs. Brown sobbed. "I've changed. I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do." The old woman smiled softly. "Then you've already done it. Pride can't live where tears fall." The forest seemed to exhale. The guinea fowls began to flutter around, and one of them, a small white one, flew toward Mrs. Brown, dropping a single feather into her hands. It glowed warmly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Take it home," Miss Lena May said. "Place it where your daughter last slept. And remember, peace is not bought. It is earned through love." Before Mrs. Brown could reply, the woman and her birds faded into mist, leaving only the sound of wings and the smell of rain. She clutched the feather to her chest, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in her life, she felt small and free. Would you have walked into that forest if you were Mrs. Brown? Could you face your fears for the love of your child? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Well for more powerful African-American folk tales that open hearts and teach unforgettable lessons. Morning came quietly, yet it felt heavy, like the earth itself was holding its breath. The sun rose over Willow Creek, bathing the hills in soft gold. But inside Mrs. Brown's mansion, the air was cold and tense. Everyone whispered. The police cars had long left, and even the neighbors stopped coming by to check in. Word spread too far and too fast. The wealthy woman's daughter vanished, and no one could explain how. Mrs. Brown had returned from the forest only a few hours ago, still trembling from what she saw. The glowing trees, the silver river, Miss Lena May's calm eyes. She hadn't told anyone about it. She couldn't. Who would believe her? They'd call her mad. But inside her heart, something had shifted. The woman who once looked down on others now looked inward, and for the first time, she saw herself clearly. The pride she wore like perfume now stung her nostrils. The things she once boasted about, her car, her jewelry, her status, fell hollow. She clutched the glowing guinea feather tightly as she climbed the stairs to Vanessa's room. Her hands were shaking. The pastor's words echoed in her mind. When your tears touch the dust, the forest will open its path. She had cried. The path had opened. Now it was time to do what Miss Lena May told her. Place the feather where her daughter last slept. She opened the door slowly. The room still smelled of her daughter's perfume, soft and floral, mixed with the faint scent of feathers. The curtains swayed gently as if the wind carried Vanessa's spirit through them. Mrs. Brown walked to bed and stood there for a long time, her throat tightening. Then she placed a feather carefully in the center of the mattress and whispered, "Please, God, bring her back to me." At first, nothing happened. The silence was deafening. She fell to her knees, sobbing, "Please, I've changed. I swear I'll never look down on anyone again. I'll give away everything. Just give me my child." Her tears fell onto the feather. The moment the first tear touched it, the room filled with a soft golden light. The curtains fluttered as if caught in a breeze from another world. Mrs. Brown looked up through her tears, and there she was, Vanessa, lying on the bed, breathing softly as though she'd only been asleep. "Vanessa!" she screamed, rushing forward. She grabbed her daughter's hand. It was warm, real. "Baby, it's me, it's Mama." Vanessa's eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes were clear, gentle, and calm, yet something about them had changed. They seemed older, wiser. "Mama," she whispered, "you found the road." Mrs. Brown broke down completely. She held her daughter tight, rocking back and forth. "I thought I lost you forever. I went to that woman. She told me, 'Oh, my child.'" Her words tangled with sobs. Vanessa smiled faintly. "I wasn't gone, Mama. I was just waiting for you to see what truly matters." "What do you mean, baby? What happened to you?" Mrs. Brown asked, brushing hair from her daughter's face. "I was taken to a place between dreams and truth," Vanessa said softly. "A place where people are shown their hearts. The old woman fed me there. She told me you were coming. She said love is loudest when pride is silent." Mrs. Brown buried her face in her daughter's shoulder. "Forgive me, Vanessa. Forgive me for everything. For my words, my pride, the way I treated others." Her daughter held her tightly. "Mama, forgiveness was waiting for you all along." The golden light in the room began to fade, leaving behind a calm stillness. Mrs. Brown looked around. The feather on the bed had turned white and lifeless. It no longer glowed, but it remained warm in her palm. She placed it gently on the nightstand, whispering a quiet "thank you." By afternoon, the house began to come alive again. The servants cried tears of relief, hugging one another when they saw Vanessa walking around. Tasha ran into the kitchen to cook something light for her. The old fear seemed to melt away. For the first time, laughter returned to mansion, not proud, boastful laughter, but soft, thankful laughter. That evening, Mrs. Brown sat outside on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. Vanessa sat beside her, head resting on her shoulder. The air smelled like rain, though the sky was clear. Birds chirped in the distance, and fireflies began to blink softly around the yard. "Mama," Vanessa said quietly, "do you think she'll ever come back?" Mrs. Brown smiled sadly. "Miss Lena May? I don't know, but if she does, I'll never drive past her again without greeting her." "She wasn't just an old woman," Vanessa whispered. "She was a messenger." Mrs. Brown nodded. "Yes, a messenger of truth." She sighed, looking up at the sky. "I used to think being rich made me untouchable, but now I see it only made me blind. Sometimes blessings don't come wrapped in wealth. They come in simple hands." Vanessa smiled. "And sometimes they come in feathers." They both laughed softly, the kind of laughter that heals. But somewhere deep in the forest, Miss Lena May sat by the river again, surrounded by her glowing guinea fowls. She watched the mother and daughter from afar, not with her eyes, but with the gentle knowing of spirits. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Her heart has finally opened. The journey is complete." The guinea fowls clucked softly, and one of them, the small white one that had followed Mrs. Brown home, spread its wings and took off into the sky. It soared high above the forest, above the hills, above the mansion where the two women sat. As it flew, a single white feather drifted down, carried by the wind, landing quietly on Mrs. Brown's porch. She looked down, saw it, and smiled. "She's watching us," she said softly. From that day, the road by the oak tree never felt lonely again. People passing by sometimes claimed they saw a faint figure sitting under it, humming softly. Others said they heard birds singing when there were no birds at all. Some travelers left food by the tree, believing it brought them luck. And those who mocked or ignored the old tales often found themselves humbled in mysterious ways. As weeks passed, Mrs. Brown's life changed completely. She sold most of her jewelry and used the money to rebuild a small orphanage on the edge of town. She started visiting the poor families she once ignored, bringing them food and listening to their stories. Her house became a place of prayer and kindness. People began calling her Mother Brown, the woman whose pride turned to compassion. Vanessa recovered fully, but she too was changed. She joined her mother in helping others and would always carry a single guinea feather in her purse, a reminder that not all miracles are loud. Some whisper, some wait patiently by the road, humming old songs. One Sunday morning, Pastor Eli came to visit. As he stepped into the house, he looked around and smiled. "I see peace has finally found its home." Mrs. Brown nodded. "Peace didn't find me, Pastor. I went looking for it, and I found it sitting by a tree with a basket of birds." He chuckled. "Then you found what many never do." Later that evening, as dusk painted the sky in orange and purple, Mrs. Brown walked barefoot down the road toward the oak tree. She carried a small basket of corn and placed it gently under the tree. "For the guinea fowls," she said softly, "for the one who taught me to see." A gentle wind rose, circling her, lifting her scarf slightly. She closed her eyes, feeling warmth against her skin, and heard the faintest whisper, "Walk in grace." When she opened her eyes, the wind had gone still. Only the distant sound of birds remained. She smiled, tears in her eyes, and whispered back, "Thank you, Miss Lena May." From that day on, every traveler who walked that road swore they saw the same thing. An old oak tree with white feathers hanging from its branches, glowing softly under the moonlight like stars caught in wood. And the locals said the road had become blessed. No accidents, no sorrow, only peace. But those who knew the story best said that peace came because one proud woman finally knelt. And when she did, heaven stood. If you were Mrs. Brown, would you have had the courage to humble yourself for the love of your child? What lesson did you learn from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Well for more powerful African-American folktales that touch hearts, teach humility, and remind us that miracles often wear simple faces. The next morning was unusually still. The trees outside Mrs. Brown's mansion hardly moved, and the birds seemed to sing slower than usual, like they, too, were trying to make sense of what had happened. Vanessa had awakened fully. She was healthy, her laughter had returned, and her eyes sparkled again. Yet Mrs. Brown could not rest. She knew the world she once understood had changed. There were things beyond money and pride, beyond her house of glass and marble. Something unseen had touched her life and rearranged it forever. After breakfast, Mrs. Brown sat alone on the porch, staring at the road. Her thoughts wandered back to Miss Lena May, the soft eyes, the calm voice, the way she vanished without a trace. She wanted answers. Who was this woman? Why had she appeared in her life? What did it all mean? She needed to understand, not just for herself, but for her daughter's peace. So she decided to visit Pastor Eli again. She dressed simply, no jewelry, no makeup, and wore flat shoes instead of heels. As she looked at herself in the mirror before leaving, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The proud glint in her eyes was gone. What replaced it was gentleness, a quiet strength born from brokenness. When she arrived at the church, Pastor Eli was outside, sweeping the steps. The moment he saw her, he smiled. "Sister Brown," he said warmly, "you look different." "I am different," she replied softly. "Can we talk?" He nodded and led her into his office. The small room smelled of old wood and candle wax. A Bible lay open on the desk, and a faint ray of light from the window fell right across its pages. Mrs. Brown sat down, her hands trembling slightly. "Pastor," she began, "I did what you told me. I went to the forest. I found Miss Lena May, or maybe she found me. She gave me a feather. I placed it on my daughter's bed, and she came back." Pastor Eli's eyes softened. Praise be to God. He does work in mysterious ways. She leaned forward. "But, Pastor, who is she? Who is Miss Lena May? She's not an ordinary woman. No one could do what she did. No one could vanish like that." The pastor sighed and sat back in his chair. "There are stories, Sister Brown, old ones passed down through generations. Stories about a guardian spirit sent to walk among people, to test hearts, to humble the proud, to heal the broken. Some call her the woman by the road. Others call her the spirit of the crossroads. I believe Miss Lena May is one of those ancient guardians." Mrs. Brown blinked, trying to take it in. "A guardian spirit?" "Yes," he said gently. "You see, long ago, there was a woman who lived in these lands before our time. She was rich, beautiful, but cruel. She mocked the poor, refused to feed the hungry, and turned away every traveler who asked for help. One day, her house caught fire, and everything she owned burned. When she tried to run, the road led her in circles until she collapsed beneath an oak tree. There, she cried for mercy. The heavens heard her cry, but gave her a task: to walk the earth until she had helped more people than she had ever hurt. And so she became a guide to those who needed humility and healing." Mrs. Brown's eyes widened. "You mean Miss Lena might be that woman?" The pastor smiled faintly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps she carries that woman's spirit. Spirits of grace are like rivers. They flow from heart to heart, generation to generation." Mrs. Brown was silent for a long moment. The thought that she had insulted such a being made her shudder. "I mocked her," she whispered. "I called her strange. I laughed at her. And still she helped me. That is the mark of true grace," the pastor said softly. "It helps even those who do not deserve it." Tears welled in Mrs. Brown's eyes. "I don't know how to repay her." Pastor Eli closed the Bible slowly. "You repay her by living what you've learned. Build with love what pride once destroyed. Feed those who are hungry. Comfort those who are hurting. That is the only offering heaven accepts." Mrs. Brown nodded, her heart heavy but full of clarity. "I will," she whispered. When she left the church, the air felt lighter. The sun broke through the clouds, shining on her face as she walked down the steps. She didn't know where she was going, but her feet seemed to move with purpose. On her way home, she stopped by a small grocery store. The cashier, a thin young man with tired eyes, looked surprised to see her. "Mrs. Brown," he said, nervous. "Can I help you?" "Yes," she said kindly. "How much do I owe for everything on that shelf?" He blinked. "Ma'am, the canned food, the rice, the oil, all of it. I want to buy everything." He hesitated, unsure if she was joking. "It's a lot, ma'am." "I know," she said, smiling. "And I want you to pack them into bags. I'll be delivering them to the widows by the riverside." The man's jaw dropped. "Ma'am, that's mighty kind of you." "Kindness," she said softly, "is a debt I owe." For the next few weeks, Mrs. Brown dedicated herself to helping others. She visited the elderly, paid school fees for children, and rebuilt a small cottage for a homeless woman she used to avoid. The town noticed. The same people who once whispered about her arrogance now spoke of her generosity. But she didn't do it for praise. She did it because every face she saw reminded her of her past blindness. Vanessa joined her in every act. Together, they started a small foundation that provided food and care to struggling families. On the day they opened it, Mrs. Brown named it the Crossroads Haven. She smiled at the sign and whispered, "For the one who showed me the way." One evening, after a long day of work, Mrs. Brown sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The moon was rising, large and silver, hanging low over the hills. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Pastor Eli walking toward her gate. "Evening, Pastor," she said, standing. "What brings you here at this hour?" He smiled. "The wind told me to check on you." She chuckled softly. "Then the wind is kind. Come sit." They sat together in silence for a moment, watching the night deepen. Finally, Mrs. Brown asked, "Do you think she'll ever come back?" "Miss Lena may." Pastor Eli took a deep breath. "She doesn't come where she's not needed. When her work is done, she moves on. So I'll never see her again?" He turned to her and said gently, "You already see her, Sister Brown. Every time you choose compassion over pride, every time you lift someone instead of judging them, that's her spirit moving through you." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I wish I could tell her thank you one more time." "You just did," he said. "She hears hearts better than words." They sat quietly, listening to the crickets. The wind brushed through the trees, carrying with it a soft humming sound. Mrs. Brown froze. That melody! She knew it well. It was the same gospel tune Miss Lena may always hummed at the crossroads. The pastor smiled knowingly. "You hear it too," he said. Mrs. Brown nodded, her heart swelling. "She's here." The humming faded into the night, but peace remained. From that day onward, every time Mrs. Brown walked by the oak tree, she left something behind: a loaf of bread, a handful of corn, a folded note with a prayer. Sometimes the items disappeared, sometimes they stayed, but she never questioned it. She knew the road was watching, the way grace always does. One night, Vanessa came into her room holding a small wooden box. "Mama, look what I found," she said. Inside the box were feathers, beautiful, speckled ones like those from Miss Lena May's birds. "Where did you find these?" Mrs. Brown asked. "On my window," Vanessa said. "Every morning 1 or 2 appear. Do you think it's her?" Mrs. Brown smiled softly. "I think it's a reminder. Grace doesn't leave, it lingers." She hugged her daughter close. "Let these feathers remind you that no one is too high to kneel and no one is too low to rise." Vanessa nodded, her eyes shining. "I'll never forget." Time passed, but the story of the mysterious Guinea Fowl Seller never died. People still spoke of her, how she could appear and disappear like mist, how her birds glowed at dawn, how she brought peace to those who had lost their way. Some said she still sat under the oak tree at night, humming softly while her guinea fowls roamed free. Others believed she became the wind itself, blowing gently through the crossroads to remind people of humility and grace. As for Mrs. Brown, she grew old but remained kind. She never became wealthy again, at least not in the way she once was. But she was rich in peace, in love, in truth, and that was more than she ever asked for. One morning, many years later, an old woman was seen walking slowly down the road with a small cage of guinea fowls. The villagers greeted her warmly, calling her Mama Brown. But a young child tugged at his mother's dress and whispered, "Mama, that woman looks just like the lady you told us about, the one by the crossroads." The mother smiled. "Hush, child. Some stories never end. They just change their names." And somewhere in the wind, faint but clear, came that same old song, the hymn of the woman by the crossroads, the hymn of mercy. Would you have believed Miss Lena May if she spoke to you on the road? What does this story teach you about humility and second chances? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Well for more unforgettable African-American folk tales that remind us grace may come in rags, but always leaves us in glory. The night wind carried a strange softness, as if the whole world had learned to whisper instead of shout. The road outside Mrs. Brown's home looked almost silver beneath the moonlight, and the great oak trees swayed gently as though bowing to something unseen. Inside, Mrs. Brown sat by the window, staring at the glowing guinea feather she kept in a small glass jar. It had stopped glowing weeks ago, yet she couldn't bring herself to throw it away. To her, it was more than a feather. It was proof that heaven had once stepped down and touched her life. But that night, something unusual happened. As she sat watching the feather, it flickered faintly, just once, like a candle struggling against the wind. Her breath caught. The room felt different. The air thickened in faintly. From somewhere far beyond the house, she heard the sound of wings. She stood slowly listening. There was again the soft fluttering of guinea fowls, the same sound that had once filled her dreams. She hurried outside, heart pounding. The sky was full of stars, and the wind seemed to whisper her name. Then she saw them. Tiny white feathers scattered across the front yard, forming a faint trail leading toward the forest. The same way they had the day she found Vanessa. She stood frozen for a moment, fear and awe mingling inside her. Then, clutching her shawl around her shoulders, she whispered, "If this is your call, Miss Lena May, I am listening," and began to follow the feathers. The trail led her down the dirt road, past the sleeping fields and the silent stream, until she reached the edge of the forest. The trees stood tall and black against the night sky. A chill ran down her spine. She hesitated, then remembered what Miss Lena May had told her once in the dream world. The road only appears when the heart is ready. So she stepped forward, and the forest opened like a slow breath welcoming her in. Inside, everything glowed faintly. The leaves shimmered as though dusted with silver. The deeper she walked, the more alive the forest became. Fireflies floated around her like tiny spirits, lighting her path. Strange flowers she had never seen before bloomed under her feet, glowing softly. She could hear the sound of water ahead, the gentle murmur of a river. As she reached the riverbank, she saw her again. Miss Lena May sat on a large stone beside the water, her white dress glimmering faintly in the moonlight. The guinea fowls surrounded her, calm and still, as if waiting for something. The old woman looked up and smiled. "You came," she said softly. Mrs. Brown's eyes filled with tears. "I felt you calling me. I couldn't ignore it." Miss Lena May nodded. "I did not call you to test you this time, child. I called you to thank you." "Thank me?" Mrs. Brown stepped closer. "I don't understand. You saved me. You saved my daughter. I should be the one thanking you." The old woman's smile deepened. "No, Mrs. Brown. You saved yourself. I only showed you the mirror." Mrs. Brown's heart tightened. "The mirror?" "Yes," Miss Lena May said gently. "The mirror of your heart. I showed you what pride had done to you, what blindness had stolen. But you were the one who chose to see. You walked the forest of humility, and now the road that once tested you will bless you." Mrs. Brown knelt by the river, overcome with emotion. "I don't deserve this grace." "Grace," Miss Lena May said, dipping her fingers into the silver water, "is never deserved. It is received. And when you receive it, you must pass it on." She cupped her hands, lifted some of the glowing water, and let it fall into the river again. Ripples spread across the surface, shimmering like starlight. Then she pointed toward the far bank. "Do you see that?" Mrs. Brown squinted. Across the river stood hundreds of people, men, women, and children, faces glowing faintly, their eyes full of peace. "Who are they?" she whispered. "They are those who once mocked the humble and later learned to bow," Miss Lena May said. "They come here when they completed their journey. The forest is not a place of punishment, child. It's a place of remembering." Tears rolled down Mrs. Brown's cheeks. "I wish I had understood sooner." Miss Lena May looked at her tenderly. "Understanding comes when it's meant to. You were not ready before, but you are now." The forest fell silent for a long moment. Only the river spoke, its voice soft and steady. Then Miss Lena May reached into the air, and a guinea feather floated toward her hand, as though the wind obeyed her. She handed it to Mrs. Brown. "Take this," she said. "When your heart begins to doubt again, hold it. It will remind you that the greatest power is not wealth or pride. It is mercy." Mrs. Brown held the feather close to her heart. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Miss Lena May smiled. "You will see me in every act of kindness you choose. I live where goodness lives." Slowly, she rose from the rock. Her feet did not seem to touch the ground. The guinea fowls gathered around her, their eyes glowing softly. The light around her body grew brighter until Mrs. Brown could hardly look. Then, like mist fading into dawn, the old woman vanished. The birds scattered into the air, flying upward, their wings painting streaks of silver across the sky. Mrs. Brown stood there long after they disappeared, staring at the river that still shimmered. She whispered, "Thank you," though she wasn't sure if the words were for Miss Lena May, for God, or for herself. The journey back through the forest felt lighter. The trees no longer loomed over her. They seemed to bow as she passed. When she stepped out into the open, dawn had broken. The first rays of sunlight fell on her face, warm and golden. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. When she returned home, Vanessa was standing on the porch, waiting. "Mama," she said, running to her, "where did you go? I was so worried." Mrs. Brown smiled through her tears. "I went to say goodbye." Vanessa frowned gently. "Goodbye? To the one who helped me find myself," Mrs. Brown said. She opened her hand and showed Vanessa the new feather. It glowed faintly in the daylight. "She gave me this, as a reminder." Vanessa touched it gently, her face softening. "It's beautiful." "It's more than beautiful," her mother replied. "It's holy." They went inside together, and Mrs. Brown placed a feather beside the old one in the glass jar. As soon as they touched, both feathers glowed again, one golden, one silver. Vanessa gasped, "Mama, look." Mrs. Brown smiled. "She's still with us." Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to normal. But something subtle had changed in the world around them. The once dry air Willow Creek now carried a gentler breeze. The trees grew greener, the rains came on time, and no one could explain it. Some said the land itself had been blessed. Others said the spirit of Miss Lena May had made her home there. Mrs. Brown continued her good works, not out of guilt anymore, but out of genuine love. She spoke at churches, schools, and gatherings, sharing her story, but not to boast. She always ended her talks the same way. Never despise anyone because of their station. The same hand that you look down on might one day lift you out of the dirt. One Sunday afternoon, after service, Pastor Eli visited again. "Sister Brown," he said with his warm smile, "you look at peace." "I am," she replied, setting down her cup of tea. "The forest taught me something." "What's that?" "That peace doesn't come from answers," she said softly. "It comes from surrender." He nodded. "You've learned well." As he stood to leave, he glanced at the glass jar on the shelf. "Those feathers," he said quietly, "they're glowing again." Mrs. Brown looked up, her eyes shining. "Yes, they glow whenever someone in this house chooses kindness over pride." The pastor chuckled. "Then I pray they never stop glowing." That night, the house was silent except for faint cooing of birds outside. Mrs. Brown lay in bed, watching the moonlight dance on her ceiling. She thought of the river, the glowing faces, the words Miss Lena May spoke, and then she whispered her nightly prayer, simple, short, and true. "Thank you for another chance." Outside, the wind picked up gently, swirling through the trees. Anyone standing there would have sworn they heard humming, the same old hymn that once drifted through the crossroads. But it wasn't sorrowful anymore. It sounded like joy. And for miles around, wherever the wind carried that song, peace followed. If you were Mrs. Brown, would you have followed the feathers into the forest? Do you believe grace still walks among us? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Well for more African-American folk tales that remind us every humble road can lead to miracles. Morning light streamed to the curtains like soft golden silk, wrapping Mrs. Brown's room in warmth. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the stillness of peace. Vanessa hummed softly in the kitchen, her voice rising and falling like the same hymn that used to echo from the crossroads. Every time Mrs. Brown heard it, her heart swelled. She could hardly believe that just a few months ago her home had been a place of arrogance, noise, and empty pride. Now it felt sacred, like a sanctuary built not of walls and wealth but of gratitude. She sat by her dressing table, looking at her reflection. The woman staring back wasn't the one she used to know. Her face had softened. Her eyes had learned how to cry and how to see. She touched her chest gently where her heart had once been hard as stone and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for breaking me in the right places." She walked out to the porch and watched the sun rise over Willow Creek. It painted the world gold and orange, turning the dew on the grass into little diamonds. Across the field, she could see the old oak tree with a road curved into the distance. Every time she looked at it, she felt as if Miss Lena May was sitting there, smiling quietly, her basket beside her, her birds cooing softly. Mrs. Brown would wave sometimes, even though she knew she was waving to the unseen. Later that morning, Vanessa joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Mama," she said cheerfully, "you're up early." Mrs. Brown smiled. "Old habits die hard. The earlier I wake, the longer I get to thank God." Vanessa sat beside her. "You're so different now, Mama." Mrs. Brown chuckled softly. "So are you, baby. Life changes us when it wants to, not when we want it to." They sipped tea together in silence for a while. Then Vanessa spoke again, more softly this time. "Mama, do you ever wish things had happened differently? That we never met her? That we never had to lose everything first?" Mrs. Brown looked out toward the fields, her eyes glistening. "No," she said after a long pause, "because if it hadn't happened the way it did, I would still be blind. Sometimes God lets the storm break everything so he can rebuild it stronger." Vanessa nodded, smiling faintly. "You sound like Pastor Eli now." "He's right about most things," Mrs. Brown said, "especially about humility. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you free." That afternoon, the 2 women prepared food to deliver to the orphanage they had started. The Crossroads Haven was growing quickly. Families came from nearby towns for food, clothes, and comfort. And every time Mrs. Brown stepped through those doors, she felt she was walking into a church. The laughter of children filled her with purpose. When they arrived, a group of little kids ran to meet them. "Mama Brown! Mama Brown!" they shouted joyfully. The title warmed her heart every time she heard it. She bent down and hugged them all, their small arms wrapping around her neck. "Are you all behaving?" she asked playfully. "Yes, ma'am," they chorused. She laughed and said, "Good, because today I brought something special." They followed her eagerly as she opened a basket filled with toys and sweets. But at the bottom of the basket, something strange caught her eye, a single guinea feather. It wasn't glowing, just soft and white. She froze for a second, then smiled knowingly. "She's watching," she whispered under her breath. "Mama?" a little boy asked. "Nothing, child," she said gently, "just remembering a friend." That night, after returning home, Mrs. Brown couldn't sleep. She walked out to the garden where the soft night breeze rustled the leaves. Above, the stars glittered like scattered pearls, and the moon hung full and round. She looked toward the forest and saw faint lights glowing far away, tiny flickers like fireflies. Her heart skipped a beat. "Miss Lena May," she whispered, "is that you?" As she spoke, a gentle wind rose, wrapping around her like invisible arms. It wasn't cold. It was warm, comforting. And in that wind, she heard a familiar voice, soft and steady. "You've done well, child." Mrs. Brown closed her eyes, tears running down her cheeks. "I'm trying," she said. "Every day I try." "You've learned that blessings are not meant to be hoarded," the voice said. "They are seeds. Plant them, and they will bloom in others." "I will," she whispered. "I promise." The wind quieted, leaving behind only the faint scent of feathers and wildflowers. She stood there for a long time, her heart full. When she finally went back inside, she found Vanessa asleep on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her. On the coffee table lay the glass jar with the 2 glowing feathers. Only now, a third one floated inside, shining with soft blue light. Mrs. Brown gasped and covered her mouth. She smiled through tears, whispering, "Thank you." From that night on, Mrs. Brown's dreams were peaceful. She no longer dreamed of fear or guilt. She dreamed of fields filled with singing birds, of roads lined with light, of people smiling at one another without pride or envy. She dreamed of a world where no one walked past a stranger without kindness. Weeks passed, and her foundation grew. Churches reached out for her to speak. Schools invited her to share her story, and her tale spread far beyond Willow Creek. Reporters came from the city to interview her, and she spoke humbly before cameras, always begin with the same line. This isn't my story. It's a story about what pride can destroy and what love can rebuild. One interviewer asked her, Mrs. Brown, do you believe that woman you met was an angel? Mrs. Brown smiled softly. She was more than an angel. She was a reminder that heaven doesn't always wear wings. It sometimes wears wrinkles and dusty shoes. The video went viral, and soon people across the country began visiting the oak tree at the crossroads. Some came to pray, some left food or letters. Others simply sat there in silence. A few claimed they saw a faint figure in white sitting under the tree, humming. Whether it was true or not, everyone who left said the same thing. They felt peace. One evening, after attending a town meeting, Mrs. Brown and Vanessa drove home slowly. The road was quiet, the air calm. As they approached the crossroads, Vanessa turned to her mother. Mama, do you mind if we stop? Mrs. Brown nodded. They parked by the oak tree and stepped out. The ground was covered with white feathers, glowing softly under the moonlight. A chill ran through Vanessa. It's beautiful, she whispered. It is, Mrs. Brown said. This is where everything began. They stood there for a while, listening to the night. Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, came the sound of a familiar humming, the same song Miss Lena May always sang. The notes floated through the air like a lullaby, gentle and full of peace. Vanessa reached for her mother's hand. Mama, she's here. Mrs. Brown squeezed her hand, her eyes glistening. She never left, baby. Spirits like hers don't leave. They rest in the hearts they've changed. They bowed their heads and whispered prayer of thanks. The humming continued, soft and steady, until the breeze carried away into the stars. As they drove home, Mrs. Brown looked out the window, smiling. For the first time in her life, she wasn't worried about tomorrow. She didn't need to be. The woman who once mocked the humble had become a vessel of grace. The road that once haunted her now blessed her. And deep down, she knew Miss Lena May's work in her life was complete. Years later, long after the road had grown quiet again, travelers passing through Willow Creek still told stories about the oak tree. Some said that if you stood there at dawn and whispered your regrets into the wind, you'd feel a gentle hand touch your shoulder. Others said that on moonlit nights, a faint glow still rose from the roots of the tree, a reminder that redemption was not a story from the past, but a living promise. And if you ever look closely, you might see 3 small feathers caught in the branches, gold, silver, and blue, dancing softly whenever the wind passed by. If this story touched your heart, what lesson did you take from Mrs. Brown's redemption? Would you recognize grace if it walked past you wearing old shoes and carrying a basket of birds? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Wealth, where powerful African-American folktales remind us that humility is the road home and kindness is the light that never fades. Years passed like a calm river flowing toward eternity. Seasons changed, children grew, and the little town of Willow Creek blossomed into a community known far beyond its borders. The Crossroads Haven became a place of miracles. People came not only for food or shelter, but for hope. They said stepping into that compound felt like walking into light. The poor left with smiles, the broken found peace, and the lost rediscovered faith. But those who knew the story whispered that it wasn't just kindness that built the haven. It was redemption. Mrs. Brown had grown older, but age suited her. The lines on her face told stories of laughter, loss, and healing. Her once polished hands were now calloused from work, but they carried warmth wherever they touched. Her silver hair glowed in the sun, and her eyes, once sharp with pride, were now deep wells of compassion. She was no longer the queen of wealth. She was the mother of mercy. Every Sunday morning before church, she would walk barefoot down the old road toward the oak tree. She always carried a small basket filled with grains for the guinea fowls that still gathered there at dawn. Though she never saw Miss Lena May again, she felt her presence every time she stepped beneath those branches. The air always smelled faintly of wildflowers and rain, and the ground was soft as though the earth remembered the touch of grace. One particular morning, The sky was soft pink, the kind of dawn that makes everything feel new. Mrs. Brown walked slowly, humming the same hymn Miss Lena May once sang. Her voice was low and gentle, carried by the wind. As she neared the tree, she saw something that made her stop. Sitting beneath the oak was a young woman dressed in white, her hair long and flowing, her hands resting gently on her knees. She looked peaceful, almost glowing. Mrs. Brown froze. For a moment, she thought she was seeing the past, the spirit of Miss Lena May. But when the woman lifted her head, she realized this was someone else. She had the same calmness, the same knowing eyes, but her face was younger. "Good morning," Mrs. Brown said softly, her voice trembling. "I didn't expect anyone here this early." The young woman smiled. "Good morning, Mama Brown. I hope I'm not intruding." "No, child," Mrs. Brown said, stepping closer. "You're welcome here. Everyone is welcome at the crossroads. What brings you here?" "I don't really know," the woman said quietly. "I was traveling through town. I felt drawn to this place. I don't know why, but when I reached this tree, I felt peace, as if someone was waiting for me." Mrs. Brown's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly. "Yes, someone was. This tree has been waiting for hearts like yours for a long time." The young woman smiled faintly. "There's something about this place," she said. "The air feels alive." Mrs. Brown sat beside her on the grass. "A long time ago, this was where I found my second chance," she said, "and I met someone who changed my life forever." The young woman turned to her. "An angel?" Mrs. Brown smiled softly. "Some called her that. I called her my teacher. She showed me that sometimes the hands that lift us don't come from heaven. They come from the dust." The woman tilted her head curiously. Did she have a name? Mrs. Brown looked up at the branches, her eyes glistening. "Miss Lena May." The young traveler went silent for a moment, then whispered, "That name sounds familiar." "How so?" Mrs. Brown asked gently. "My grandmother used to tell stories about a woman named Lena May," the traveler said. "She said Lena May was her mother's sister. She disappeared many years ago, after a fire destroyed her home. My grandmother said she was never found. Some believed she died. Others said she became a spirit who helped people." Mrs. Brown's breath caught in her throat. "Your grandmother, what's her name?" "Evelyn May," the traveler replied. "She lives down south now, but she's very old." Mrs. Brown pressed her hand to her chest. "Then it's true," she whispered. "The guardian had a family once. And now, her story has come full circle." The young woman frowned softly. "You mean she was real?" Mrs. Brown smiled, eyes glistening. "As real as this wine touching our faces. As real as your voice right now." The woman looked down, tears filling her eyes. "All my life, I thought it was just a legend." "No, child," Mrs. Brown said, taking her hand gently. "She was more than a legend. She was love that refused to die." The two sat together in silence, the air heavy with peace. Above them, the oak leaves rustled gently. A few white feathers drifted down, landing softly at their feet. The traveler gasped. "Look," Mrs. Brown smiled, her heart swelling. "She's here," she whispered. "She never really left." The young woman picked up one of the feathers and held it to her heart. "I'll keep this," she said, "to remember her." Mrs. Brown nodded. "Then remember this too, her lesson. The world doesn't need more proud people. It needs more gentle ones." They sat beneath the oak until the sun rose high, and the birds began to sing. Then the young traveler stood, tears shining on her cheeks. "Thank you for sharing your story," she said softly. "It's changed me." Mrs. Brown smiled faintly. "That's what stories do, child. They change us even when we don't realize it." The traveler hugged her, then walked away slowly, disappearing down the road. As she left, a gust of wind swirled through the air, lifting the feathers into a gentle dance. Mrs. Brown watched them, her heart light and full. That night, she dreamed of the forest again. But this time, it wasn't the glowing silver river or the endless twilight. It was bright and filled with laughter. She saw Miss Lena May standing by the riverbank, surrounded by guinea fowls and children. Her white dress shimmered in the sun. She turned to Mrs. Brown and said, "You've done well, my child. You've walked the road to the end." Mrs. Brown smiled in her dream. "I did what you taught me." "And now," Miss Lena May said softly, "it's time to rest." In the dream, Mrs. Brown felt herself grow light, her body filled with warmth and peace. She reached out to touch Miss Lena May's hand, and when their fingers met, everything turned into light. The next morning, Vanessa went to wake her mother but found her sleeping peacefully, a soft smile on her face. The window was open, the curtains fluttering. On her chest lay 3 feathers, gold, silver, and blue, glowing faintly in the morning sun. Vanessa fell to her knees, crying and smiling all at once. She whispered, "Thank you for giving her peace." Word spread quickly through Willow Creek. The whole town mourned, but they didn't mourn in sorrow. They celebrated her life. The church bells rang all day, and people gathered at the Crossroads Haven to tell stories about how she had changed them. They said the moment she passed, the sky turned golden, and the air smelled faintly of wildflowers and rain. At the burial, Pastor Eli stood beside Vanessa, his voice steady and full of emotion. "Today," he said, "we don't bury a woman, we plant a seed. Her kindness will bloom in generations yet unborn. Her story will walk these roads long after our feet are gone." After everyone left, Vanessa walked alone to the oak tree. The wind was soft, and the leaves whispered overhead. She knelt beneath the tree, her tears falling onto the roots. "Mama," she whispered, "I'll keep your promise. I'll keep her story alive." The wind rose gently, swirling around her, and she heard it again, the faint humming of Miss Lena May's hymn, the same one her mother used to sing. Vanessa closed her eyes, smiling through her tears. "She's with you now," she said, "and she's watching me." When she opened her eyes, 3 guinea fowls were standing near her, watching silently. One of them tilted its head, as if bowing. Vanessa laughed softly, wiping her tears. "Go on," she said. "Tell her I said thank you." As the birds fluttered away into the golden sky, the oak tree shimmered faintly. Feathers drifted down like snow, blanketing the ground in white. And for those who passed by that road in years to come, they said the tree still glowed sometimes, especially at dawn, when forgiveness felt closest to the earth. The story of Miss Lena May, the mysterious guinea fowl seller, became a legend told across generations. Some told it as a tale of grace. Others said it was about faith. But those who truly understood it knew the truth. It wasn't just about a woman or her birds. It was about every soul who has ever been broken, healed, and made whole again by love. And somewhere beyond sight and sound, 2 women, one old, one redeemed, walked side by side along a road that never ended, humming softly as the light of eternity shimmered around them. What lesson did you take from the mysterious guinea fowl seller? Do you believe angels still walk among us in simple clothes? Tell us in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Well for more African-American folk tales that lift hearts, heal souls, and remind us that grace sometimes comes wearing dust, carrying feathers, and humming an ode beneath the morning sun.